Estás viendo BronxNet. Tu voz, tu opinión, tu visión. Las opiniones expresadas en este programa son exclusivamente de los participantes y de ninguna manera reflejan las opiniones de BronxNet o sus patrocinadores.
On this edition of Dialogo Abierto, we welcome CSEA Local 401 President Abraham Benjamin as we discuss the plans by the Cuomo administration to downsize the Bronx Psychiatric Center to about 80 full and part-time workers, effective May 31. So stay tuned. All this and much more is headed your way on Dialogo Abierto.
Comunicaciones.
Me gustó.
Te felicito.
A lo largo de 50
Nunca olvidar de dónde vienes.
Muy bien.
Mucha inspiración. Orgullosa. Integridad.
Las personalidades que han puesto en la ciudad.
Hola y buenas noches a todos. Soy Ramón Rodríguez y ustedes están viendo una edición de Diálogo Abierto, un programa para la comunidad hispana donde información necesaria se provee y donde le pedimos que se puedan involucrar desde sus casas. Today is April 25th, and remember that we want to hear from you, so send us an email at dialogoabierto@bronxnet.org or call us at 718-960-7241. Also, remember that you can find this episode and past episodes at BronxNet.org. Recently, union workers waved signs and shouted slogans at Waters Place and Eastchester Road in Morris Park, claiming that the cuts are hurting their Bronx patients. And with us now to discuss this further is CSEA Local 401 President Abraham Benjamin. Welcome to the show, and thank you for taking time to be with us. And based on the opening, it certainly sounds as though these are some, at best, challenging times for your local and for some of the workers that certainly the current situation has affected.
Okay, and thank you for having us. Yes, it's challenging for the workers, but also our concerns about the people we give service to, the patients. We actually want them to assimilate back into society, but we want them to be able to function in an appropriate way and actually come back into the community, giving all the tools they need to address their illness and be productive in society.
So how do you feel that the current situation as it relates to the downsizing that is indicated, that is occurring, how do you feel that that impacts the patients and their eventual assimilation back to the general population?
How it impacts, because what they're doing now are pushing patients out, so that way they get rid of the beds, so then they can release the staff by laying them off if they don't have the proper, if they don't have a certain number of patients, and the patients that they are releasing aren't really prepared to be back in the population, and that becomes detrimental to the community, but also to those people, because those are our family, friends, they're our children, they live in our community, and they deserve the proper service. People should not be sent out without the tools to survive in society. I don't want to see any of the clients that I serve out there having to panhandle, not being able to get a job. I've been working with the state in that facility over 31 years. I remember when they got training on how to take an interview, how to take care of themselves. There was a time that if they didn't have a high school diploma, we had instructors came up to give them their GED. Now you have people on what they call a mall playing Connect 4, and these are 40 and 50-year-old people. These are young adults, middle-aged adults, and older adults, and they're not getting the tools. And the only people that they actually have good contact and get rapport and relationships with are the staff that do the direct care and give them the services. And those are a lot of the people who are being let go, the people who feed them, the people who give them daily care, who maintain the buildings. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones they're letting go that actually have that interaction, and actually even some recreational therapists.
Yes.
And art therapists who try to get them engaged in what they need to get engaged in so they can actually be productive in society.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense, what you're saying in terms of the impact and effect that it has on the population that you serve, and how that population is affected as it attempts to transition back into general society. Let me ask, I understand that at your facility, excuse me, there's been the closing of some wards. Can you share a little bit of that information with us and how that has impacted the services?
Okay, I will go back in history. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had what we would call a geriatrics ward, where we had patients who were elderly. They started to close that ward, push some of our patients into nursing homes. The ones who were unable to go into nursing homes, they then filtered them into the general population, mixing them with patients who could be more aggressive and a lot younger, putting them at danger. That was the first ward, one of the first wards that closed.
The geriatric
The geriatric wards. And my problem is they actually put them in the general population amongst young people who were very more active, and a lot of them a lot more aggressive. So that puts them in danger. Then we also had one of our male admission wards that was closed recently, and that was all males, and they were basically a young population, very difficult to manage and try to engage. They closed that ward, and then once again they filter into the general population, which can cause a lot of, how would I say, bullying of the other clients, because some of those clients who were on that ward were more sociopaths than psychiatric patients.
I see. Let me ask you this, Abraham. As far as the geriatric community is concerned, are services still being provided to them in any kind of inpatient or outpatient treatment?
As far as inpatient, no, not on a consistent basis. I'm aware of someone who was aging out that they tried to push out a few days ago without the proper justification and even talking to the person who's their caregiver and getting that information. Subsequently now, that person has come back because the home that they were sending to didn't want to take them.
And what about the issue that that some of these patients who, to borrow your words, that are pushed out, wind up looking for care, medical care in emergency rooms, or in some dire cases wind up in the prison system as a result of some hassle with the law that they got into. Can you speak to that?
I can actually speak to that, and I actually have a perfect example, because we do have 3 outpatient facilities on the grounds. We had
that address the needs of what population, what age group?
Unfortunately, it's mixed. It's not.
Why do you say unfortunately?
It's not age sensitive, because sometimes you need to put people in an area where they can thrive, and when you mix very young people with older people, it becomes it can be very tense. And if those people don't have the skills to actually be prepared to move out in the community, we had one young lady who has actually been in the system over 20 years that was moved to one of our outpatients facility without her brother being told. Then the brother finds out that she's over there, and she calls and says she's going to cut herself or someone.
Well, let me ask you, just out of curiosity and out of ignorance, really, someone such as that you described, being in the system for some 20 years or so, has that person yet not reached a point, if it were possible, to reintegrate back into society and receive outpatient treatment?
Some people are going to be what we call chronic. They have long-term. They can get to a certain stage of competence, but they won't go any further. And we also, there are residents that have assisted living and things of that nature. So you have to actually move people out into the level that they are prepared to and can accomplish, and that's one of the problems. This person, they tried to push them into an area where they haven't graduated to that point and probably would never will.
So that, in your opinion, I mean, and I'm not asking for a medical opinion here, but based on your experience of 31 years and what you've seen, is it safe to say that you believe, as opposed to rendering an opinion, but that you believe that an individual like that should remain in an inpatient, intensive residential situation as opposed to an outpatient?
An inpatient, depending on, there's different levels of care that you can give. You can get assisted living centers, but they need to be placed in the appropriate settings. And when they have family members that are involved in their treatment, those people's thoughts, their wants, their feelings should be taken into consideration. This brother was very distraught on finding his sister and that she was in that outpatient facility. And then when he did find her, he found her at Jacoby Hospital. Jacoby would not admit her because she belonged to Bronx State's transitional living program.
Do you do referrals to outside programs, providers, when someone is perhaps ready or reached a level where they can transition out? I don't know, for lack of a better description, are there some kind of halfway houses or something like that might be able to accommodate these patients?
Actually, I'm glad you asked that. Yes, but the thing is, I don't feel that the powers that be are sending the appropriate patients to those types of facilities. It seems like they're just pushing people out who aren't prepared so they can have a revolving door. That's my personal opinion, because I see some of...
When you say they, who they?
The managers, the people who are running the hospitals, the directors.
When you say hospitals, again, you're referring
I'm
to the
talking about
psychiatric
Bronx
center?
Psychiatric Center specifically. I can't speak for other facilities because I don't know how they run. But a lot of these clients I know their family. I have good conversations with them. Right. And I've seen some of our residents who everyone knows is not prepared, and then in 2 days they will tell them they have to be discharged. They're not ready, but we'll have someone who's been there for 2-3 years, and they should have that opportunity to be discharged. They're not.
Okay.
We've had patients who have assaulted other patients and staff members, and 3 days later, they're being discharged. I don't understand if we're supposed to be giving them the care and making sure that they can actually have a fair chance to survive out there in society.
So within 3 days, in situations like that, they've gone through all kinds of medical and psychiatric assessments, and within that short period of time, given what got them there to begin with, there's been some determination made that they're ready to be reintegrated back into society?
That might be what the managers would say. I have someone who hit a staff member, and to have them calm down, they were told, we're going to discharge you in 2 days. I don't see where the evaluation took place.
Okay, and on that note, we'll take a short break, and we'll be back briefly after these messages with more dialogue with Abraham Benjamin discussing the situation, the local 401 at the Bronx Psychiatric Center. We'll be right back.
Your education is the key to your future. And if you're a high school student, your next stop is college. A college education gives high school graduates a competitive advantage professionally and financially. Without it, your job opportunities are much more limited. A college diploma is a necessary requirement for any successful tomorrow. So make sure you're prepared. Speak to your guidance counselor. Visit your local colleges. Your education is the key to your future.
Todo el mundo tiene amigos. Hay amigos para chatear. Amigos con quienes salir un sábado por la noche. Amigos con quienes pasar el tiempo sin hacer nada. Amigos que aparecen el día de la mudanza. Y hay amigos que estarán allí si alguien se está enfrentando a una enfermedad mental. ¿Eres tú uno de esos amigos?
¿Cuáles son los números que importan en tu vida?
Tu salario.
¿Tu aniversario de bodas?
Los cumpleaños de tus hijos.
Si tienes diabetes, el número más importante es tu A1C.
A1C.
A1C. A1C.
El A1C es el número que le dice a tu doctor si tu diabetes estuvo bajo control los últimos 3 meses.
Porque si tu diabetes no está controlada, entonces tu corazón podría estar en riesgo.
Pregúntale a tu doctor cuál es tu A1C.
Pregúntale.
Él lo sabe y tú debes saberlo también.
Únete a la campaña Ahora sé mi A1C.
¿Qué demonios es esto?
Gordura de la espalda. Seguramente alguien lo perdió comiendo popcorn de un tamaño más pequeño.
Dame eso.
And we're back with more conversations with CSEA Local 401 President Abraham Benjamin and the impending cuts that are threatened at the Bronx Psychiatric Center. Before the break, we were just talking about some of the concerns and issues as it relates to assessments, medical and psychiatric assessments that are made on some patients that are brought in who you have witnessed and or experienced are discharged in a very short period of time. And that was certainly something that was interesting, if not alarming to hear, but neither of us are doctors nor psychiatrists, so certainly we can't form an opinion on that, but or at least an expert opinion. But anyway, let me just touch upon something else that I understand has occurred recently, and that is the reduction in awards, or a couple of awards that were dedicated to, as I understand, monolingual speaking patients, i.e. Spanish-speaking patients or Spanish-dominant patients.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that, what has happened and where it's at now?
I will say, and I believe it was formed 15 to 20 years ago with the director at that time, Margarita Lopez, that we had 2 Hispanic units. We had a monolingual unit, and we also had bilingual unit. And actually, we addressed our residents' treatment with cultural issues also, getting that involved and reminding them of their culture, and that helped get them prepared and made it comfortable for them to accept treatment. Right now, they have closed one of those wards, and we have a large population of Latino patients. They've closed one of those wards, stating that they were going to give us a community treatment program resident, which would be in the outpatient residence. Patients who have a difficult time to get discharged, they would go there and they would find them someplace to live and stay and assimilate back into the population.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What's the size of those wards traditionally?
The traditional, the outpatient or the inpatient
The
ward?
inpatient.
The inpatient ward has been a history between 25 and 30 residents.
And so how many of those wards do you currently have?
Total or the...
No, just the monolingual ward.
Right now we only have one.
One, and what's the capacity of that?
At this present time, they have 25 residents on that unit. And the community transitional program unit, which was supposed to be dedicated to the Latino population, did not transpire, and all they have there is 7 beds.
Okay, so the question that occurs to me, of course, is how, if at all, are those patients or potential patients who were being treated and housed in those wards, what kind of treatment, if any, are they now getting, and if so, where?
Once again, those patients are either mixed in general population, and in my personal opinion, they're not getting as good a care as they were getting before, when they had their culturally sensitive treatments.
Oh, okay. So let me understand this now so that our viewing audience can be very clear, if I am. And that is, so they cut one ward of the monolingual residents.
Yes.
But if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the one ward that was cut those residents of that ward have now been integrated into the general population.
General population,
Okay.
yes.
So they were not displaced in terms of not receiving any services. They were just displaced from a ward that was culturally and linguistically dedicated to them, to their needs.
Some of them, because some of them were put out into the community.
I see.
So it was a mixture.
I see.
Some of them would get discharged and come right back, but then they would not come back to that ward that was sensitive to their needs.
I see.
And their culture.
I see. Okay. Let me shift gears here and talk about something that is certainly near and dear to the hearts of many. Certainly the management, the administration that runs the facilities, et cetera, and that is the issue of money, which I guess in many cases certainly that's what a lot of this is all about. And I want to address specifically a recent disclosure that was put out by the state controller, Tom DiNapoli, highlighting the highest overtime paid individuals in the state. And among those that were the highest paid was a security person at the Bronx Psychiatric Center whose base salary was somewhere in the neighborhood of around $68,000 or so and made about $119,000 in overtime.
Okay.
So there's an individual that made somewhere in the neighborhood of about $180,000, $190,000. Not a bad gig, you know. And the question that occurs to me is that if there's been this reduction in the population of the facility, and I'm going to assume for a moment no reduction on the security end of the house, how is it that that washes in terms of the amount of overtime? Because it seems to me that if you have a smaller population to provide security for, that the opportunity for overtime would be less. Or am I completely misconstruing that?
You're completely misconstruing that.
And that's what I like to be as educated. So tell me.
Because first of all, that gentleman was allowed to make that much overtime because they did not have enough staff in the first place.
Security staff.
Security staff, but in general, a lot of the people who are being cut are from the departments that generate the most overtime. But we're talking about security specifically. We had a guard post when you came into the grounds.
Okay.
That is not manned because we do not have enough staff.
Okay.
We have points.
So is that an open gate now?
Oh, yes, it's an open gate.
Okay.
I'll be honest, and I'll probably get in trouble for this.
Well, don't do that.
No, I have no problem because I'm going to tell the truth.
Okay.
If an important dignitary comes in, you'll have someone at the gate. Usually there's nothing there but an empty safety vehicle.
I see.
Okay. On the grounds.
Is that supposed to be a deterrent?
Allegedly.
Okay.
But you see a vehicle there empty for a long period of time. We're from the Bronx. We have sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Got that.
All right. Patrolling the grounds, they don't have enough officers to patrol the grounds and the buildings. So they end up generating a lot of overtime because of the shortness of staff, especially on the day tour, which is called the B tour, and the C tour, the evening tour, because they cannot cover all the areas and all the buildings on the grounds because they do not have enough staff. When you have to escort patients or people coming into the facility and make sure that they're in a safe environment and they're not bringing any contraband in, it's very difficult if you don't have the amount of people you need to do the job. There's posts that are not monitored. We now have an open grounds. We have patients who can come in and out because they're on an outpatient basis. We don't have enough staff to watch those grounds so people don't get injured and hurt.
Now, have there been incidents?
I can give you an incident that we were informed that an ex-transitional living patient came on the grounds with a weapon to go after a present resident. So yes, it has happened, and everybody was not informed. I just happened to hear about it, and I had to actually get that verified because they didn't even notify the children's facility. We also have a children's facility on our site. And there's many times that when I'm coming in or I'm making my rounds that I will see some of our outpatients that I do know their history over by the children's facility, and because of their history, they shouldn't be over there.
Okay. Now, just one more note on the whole issue of overtime, because I know that when we were off camera, I know that you indicated to me that there are other staff personnel at the center who do also have to clock a sufficient amount of overtime or a substantial amount of overtime because, again, as you indicated, of the shortage on staffing capabilities that currently exist. And just as a matter of information for our viewing audience, the state last year paid over $469 million in overtime, to obviously a variety of employees throughout the state system. So it's certainly an issue that apparently is looking to be addressed and is looking to be reduced in these cost-saving times. And I suspect that whatever needs to be done in order to accomplish that, they'll probably push to do.
But I don't understand their logic. If you don't have enough employees to do the job now, and you have to pay overtime, lessening that pool is going to generate more overtime. So where are you saving the money?
Well, that's the issue that's to be determined, right? But listen, I certainly don't want us to have to wrap up our show in this very interesting and informational dialogue before we talk a little bit about briefly what's going to happen on May 3rd. Okay, and we have about 60 seconds or so for you to tell us briefly what's going to happen May 3rd, and that you're asking Bronx residents to join in solidarity for what you're going to do.
Yes. May 3rd, we're having an informational picket on Eastchester Road and Waters Place. We want the community to come out and actually support us, but also support their brothers and sisters and their neighbors, the residents we give service to. Because the most important thing for us is to make sure the people we give service to are given the proper treatment and they can actually go back in the community and function in a positive fashion. We think it's an insult to us as Bronx citizens to have the people we care about not get the proper services. And on top of that, the people who give them the services and live in the community of the Bronx, they are also taking away their jobs. Where will they spend their money if they have no money to spend in our community? And where will our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors get the proper treatment so they can actually assimilate back into the population? I actually remember some of my clients getting better, graduating from Bronx Community College and inviting me to their graduation, graduating from Hunter College. We don't want to be babysitters. We want to help people help themselves get better.
And on that note, I thank you so much for sharing all of this information with us. And remember, that rally will take place May 3rd from 2 to 4:30 p.m. in Waters Place and Eastchester Road. Yeah. Y con eso, televidentes, les doy las gracias por mantenerse sintonizados, pero lamentablemente se nos ha acabado el tiempo por hoy de esta edición de Diálogo Abierto, donde como siempre nos dedicamos a compartir información con la comunidad hispana, y es un placer visitar con ustedes en sus hogares y darle detalles de ocurrencias y oportunidades en nuestra comunidad. De nuevo, les doy las gracias a nuestro invitado y a ustedes por mantenerse sintonizados y estar con nosotros. Hasta la próxima, les deseo muy buenas noches y nos veremos en la próxima edición de Diálogo Abierto.